Hello, happy Thursday, everybody. And here we are. We're getting to the end of our week. I hope everybody's having a really blessed week. And yeah, March 3rd, and here we go. Today's topic. Now, first off, I want to apologize to you guys because I kind of at the beginning of the week, I was promoting the fact that this week I was going to be going into narcissistic relationships and so forth. However, that's actually next week, but this is the preemptive into that. And some of my articles, well, I'm happy to say this. Some of my articles are not for everybody because I dive into some pretty heavy areas when it comes to narcissism, psychopaths, toxic relationships, emotional abuse, physical abuse. And these are really hard places sometimes for, people to put themselves in to realize that, yeah, this is exactly what I've been through. And it's a really hard place because when you get into a relationship with a psychopath, with a narcissist, it has such a heavy, heavy impact on our self-resolve of us, our self-care, our self-value, our self-worth. And all these things are so very important that we can maintain, but man, it can get broken down so fast and be so detrimental. So today we are going to be talking about when you have been in a relationship and what it even looks like to be in a relationship with a psychopath. So I'm hoping that this segment will help those who are either suffering or have suffered in relationships with a true psychopath. Now, sadly, I speak from experience, and it's one of the most unhealthy scenarios to be in. So let's dive in here. We're going to take a deeper look. We learn about others and ourselves through our intimate relationship experiences. So what if an experience was traumatic and left behind psychological scars that require healing or even professional intervention? This is a reality for many who have found themselves in an intimate relationship with a psychopath. Psychopathy is such a commonly used word online and in the media, making the symptoms for the general public kind of ambiguous. Psychopathy is a disorder related to specific faulty brain functions. And a few such areas include the, ventromedial, prefrontal cortex, amygdala, anterior cingulate cortex. So let's address some basics. Psychopathy is a deeply ingrained constellation of personality traits and behaviors. And the symptoms reflect an emotional processing disorder with a strong genetic foundation. The condition makes up approximately 1 to 2% of the population and is present in both sexes, although kind of unevenly. So, but being a psychopath, it's a complex condition with a specific underlying neurological dysfunction, a range of intensity, i.e., like on continuum or spectrum. Positive symptoms: adaptability, ability to conceal dark traits, and the presence of subtypes such as primary and secondary. And we're going to break that down a little bit. But psychopaths are prone to interact through manipulation and to use others for their sole benefit, even if this creates pain and devastation for the target. Extending love and care to them will not impact the expression of pathology from the psychopathic partner. Now, there's some vast symptoms of this condition. And I want to talk about what some of those traits are. It's lack of or minimal empathy, callousness, manipulation, pathological lying, and oh my God, they can be so charming. A tendency towards boredom. Most times there's a lot of arrogance there. Blame shifting, dominance, aggression, impulsivity. In companies, individuals with psychopathy can orchestrate the loss of jobs, turn people against each other, even divide a team. And within intimate relationships, they can leave partners and family members struggling with the impact of trauma, betrayal, abuse. And those effects potentially last years after this person's gone. And it's important to know that psychopathy is a condition on a spectrum. There is a gradient or range, and some individuals with psychopathy are more disordered than others. Not everybody falls into the same structure. Now, evidence indicates that there are two variants of psychopathy, which is primary and secondary, and the core symptoms tend to be present in both variants. But it is suspected that the underlying etiology is different. Those considered primary psychopaths have the symptoms we typically associate with this disorder. They are emotionally underreactive, lack anxiety, and have high narcissism. Research correlates this form of psychopathy with a genetic foundation. This suggests that it is unlikely that mistreatment during their childhood was the primary contributor to their affective, defects. There's a biological predisposition to this neurodevelopment condition. Conversely, those with secondary psychopathy tend to be emotionally reactive and tense individuals. This form of psychopathy is typically described as emotionally dysregulated and anxious. And studies support that past trauma, abuse, and environmental factors are highly correlated with this form of psychopathy. And now, some researchers don't even consider secondary psychopathy truly psychopathic at all. Now, even within these variants of psychopathic disorder, one will often exhibit two sides or two faces. For example, many individuals appear charming, exciting, and loaded with charisma in public. People might feel drawn to them, finding their magnetic persona and achievements admirable. But at home, these same individuals may instill fear, causing those who love them most to walk on eggshells around them in attempts to avoid their hair-trigger temper. So, what are the obstacles to a safe and happy relationship? Aside from problems such as minimal empathy, antagonism, manipulation, and anger, I'm going to share with you 6 additional factors that hinder safe relationships with a psychopath. One is minimal capacity to bond. Number 2 is at the beginning of their intimate relationships, they are typically excited and stimulated by their new This state can easily be mistaken as bonding and deep caring for their mate. However, this tends to be the dopamine driven stage of romantic love that can feel like addictive attraction. And once that fades, so does their interest. It is often at this point that they display disdain for their partner. It's almost like they're tolerating. Dysfunctional relationship cycle is number 3. And most times they'll have a trail of dysfunctional relationships. Number 4 is they often demonstrate a predictable cycle style of intimate relationships that are common for those with cluster B personality disorder. They idealize, devalue, and then discard their partners with no concern for the pain they leave behind. Given that they never had a bond with their mate in the first place, walking away from the relationship causes them little to no discomfort. Many are happy to move along to the next target, particularly if they left their former mate in the loser position. And that's important sometimes for a psychopath. If they leave you distraught, in pain, suffering, well, they feel they've won. They're in control. They've kept themselves on the upper end as far as they're concerned. Number 5 is an inability to offer a genuine apology. And why is that? Because they don't care. They don't have that empathy. They don't care that they hurt you. They don't care what their actions did. A psychopath is focused on the psychopath. They're focused on them. They're focused on what they need in order to sustain their mental space and their lifestyle and their life cycle. And if you don't fit into that and they can't control and manipulate you, you start to serve very little purpose. Psychopathy is a disorder that hampers the ability to feel guilt and remorse. Due to faulty brain functions, there's a tendency to engage in immoral behavior. When they hurt someone or cause damage, they usually will not offer an apology. If what appears to be an apology is offered, it's rarely beyond words and tends to include an element of, distancing, minimizing. Oh, I made a mistake. Sorry. But they don't really mean that. And the feelings of guilt and remorse are missing because those emotional states are not within their capacity. Therefore, the typical contrition that would naturally follow when one has caused harm to another will be absent. Their stance is typically move on. Let it go. You're too sensitive. You're a drama queen. Or why are you still talking about that? It's in the past. Let it go. And that's easy for them to say. Number 7 is a presence of high narcissism. Now, this is a kind of a tricky area because, I talk a lot about narcissistic behavior, and even a narcissistic sociopath. Well, all of those traits really ring true with a true psychopath. Because with a true psychopath, narcissism is a main point of their foundation. Number 8 is for those with primary, it is in their nature to have an incredibly inflated, grandiose sense of self. They do not need or care about the approval of others. Any desire they have for control or worship is associated with feelings of superiority, not insecurity. And unfortunately, for the individual with the psychopathy, there tends to be no genuine interest in friendships. Number 9 is everyone is assigned a role and has a use. It's the you're my object mentality. A psychopath is kind of orchestrating their own play. It's their life, and they control the characters that are in that life. And if you don't serve a purpose, or they can't control you, or have you facilitate their need, you become obsolete. It's easy for them to use you to the nth degree until there's nothing left and then just pop you to the side, let you go. Number 10 is they have a strong need for power and control and often place others in the role of loser, even if those who demonstrate loyalty, trust, and love toward them. Doesn't matter. You're still a loser. Psychopathic individuals usually have a use for those they keep close. They consider some people puppets who would defend them, agree with them, or sacrifice their own reputation to protect them. And it is often their preference to have numerous puppets. For many with psychopathic behavior, this role is also assigned to their intimate partner. Number 11 is immorality. Psychopathy is a disorder that has immorality as a core feature. When there's immorality, harm to others tends to follow. It would not be uncommon for someone with this condition to have secret or dual lives, pervasive hateful thoughts, or a constant pattern of violating behaviors. Examples include, internet trolling, using children as pawns, abusing, bullying others, forcing partners to have sex or anything like that. These are all examples of immorality. A healthy intimate relationship is extremely difficult to establish with an adult who seeks to control and demean another. Their lack of care or concern regarding the impact of their actions can further exacerbate the pain for their mates. It can be difficult for loved ones to move past their flippant manner of inflicting harm. He hurt me, and he didn't seem to care. And no, he won't, or she won't. Within relationships, the behaviors demonstrated by an individual with psychopathic disorder can quickly create distance, anxiety, and a power differential. And quite often then, psychopathic relationships are traumatic for the non-psychopathic partner. Naturally, domination and control obstructs normal bonding for the person involved in these relationships. And instead, the type of bond created is one based on fluctuating abuse and dependence, a trauma bond. And this form of intense attachment can be difficult for the non-psychopathic partner to break, thereby placing him or her in an unsafe and dysfunctional relationship. If you feel stuck or simply need help, or if you've ever been in that kind of relationship and you're still getting past it, I encourage you. You got to reach out and let some things out, even if it's a close friend or something like that, because nobody deserves to battle that kind of situation alone. There's so many times I've had people come for therapy and they're in this situation and they can't seem to get their brain around the fact that, but I love them. And I know that they just need help. They just need to talk. They just need to, But for somebody that truly is in this space, there is no talk that's going to help them. They do not have the capacity in their mindset to actually process what it is you want them to process, because there is no self-accountability. There never will be self-accountability. You are merely a character in their play. And it's like as soon as you lose your lines, they have no need for you. There is no purpose. And if they hurt you, they don't care. And then that place becomes, did you want them to care? You need them to care. You want them to have that accountability. It's the same thing when dealing with a narcissist. You want them to have accountability for what they did or the harm they caused. And that is the cycle that will make you feel like you're going absolutely insane, because it will never come around the way you want it to. And that's what makes people that are in these kind of relationships build such an unhealthy pattern. Build those walls and those routines and those ruts that keep you in that place. Because it's hard to admit sometimes that you've been in that situation. It's hard to admit sometimes, or even view, the amount of damage that maybe you've put up with, or endured, suffered from, that broke you down, demeaned you, devalued you. And that's a hard place to admit sometimes. But you definitely should never be alone in that. Now, in some of my shows, I don't really open the stage up. I am going to open the stage up right now. If anybody would like to come up and share some thoughts or give your 2 cents on this topic, I would love to hear from you. I was hoping you would come up, Deanna. How are you? Happy Thursday to you.
Happy Thursday. I'm great. I have a client in 10 minutes, but this topic for me is um is not a topic that I've researched deeply. Although I do think I've definitely encountered this, you know.
Right? Sure.
So um so I guess my question here is, and it's really going to be a question because, like I said, I'm not a pro at this at all. Um, is that it in this situation or this diagnosis or however you want to put it? Um, is it typically a true imbalance? Because I do feel like people can be numbed to this through traumatic situations, but maybe can regain themselves, which I would guess is not true. I don't know if I'm making myself clear
You mean
on
for
this
the person
question.
that's considered the psychopath?
Yes.
Well, and that's where it comes into play of a primary and a secondary. So
Gotcha.
it's kind of believed that people with secondary, their their mode of how they operate was kind of based on environmental factors or how they were raised and things of that nature. And on occasion, people can be learn to see that and restructure maybe how they form. Okay, but when you're talking about someone who truly is psychopathic, okay, a lot of times that is a foundation you will never break.
All right,
It's
and that
so ingrained.
right. So okay, and that answers the second question: is like, is there a healing process for those people, or is it just they get to go through life like that and just never realize what they
Most that
are?
Yeah, well, most that are truly a psychopathic person. Okay, it's something that's going to be there for life.
Right.
But here's the gambit: is that it's debated now about the secondary element. Okay, the secondary level, because a lot of psychologists and even psychiatrists, well, they believe that the secondary really doesn't exist. You're either a psychopath or you're not. You
Gotcha.
know, but the secondary is important because the secondary is psychopathic behavior, psychopathic features, and all of these things that does exist. It just exists for some different reasons. It's not purely genetic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not purely fits into the primary. A primary, there is no coming back from that.
Right. Okay. So, and then that leads to the last question, which is, do you notice that the people who tend to wind up in relationships with, um, I know you were talking about cycles repeating, right?
Right?
That they wind up in a relationship with that because their personality lends themselves to thinking that they can fix something or,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes it's that lost puppy dog syndrome. You know, and
right.
like I'm gonna fix them. It's okay. Like I love what they present so much, their charisma, their confidence, their all of these things, and they feel like that whenever something bad happens, oh well, that's just they understand what happened, so therefore I can turn around and fix it. Whereas with a primary psychopath, you will never ever actually fix it.
Right. And
They
you're
might
begging them for self awareness that they're incapable of even acting.
exactly, yeah, you will
Gotcha.
never get them to have accountability.
Got it. I mean, I'm pretty sure my ex is this, but I'm just, curious, how it works because, like
Right?
you said, we always said even about him, even going through an abusive relationship, that there were these redeeming qualities, and we always feel like, oh my God, he has the best friends because he
Right?
did. He had charisma. He has this character, and everything he did wasn't always bad. I mean, and so it's like it's so hard to balance. You crying over here, but then your crying it doesn't make sense because you're still doing this over here. Uh, you
Yeah.
know. Anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the whole
Interesting.
thing, is that, it really does go to that place where, for a primary psychopath, okay, it really is just like orchestrating their own play.
Hmm.
You are simply a character in their orchestration.
Hmm.
And when they can't control you and manipulate you and have you do what they want you to do all the time, you start to you become obsolete in their world. And then, and so if they're keeping you around, they're keeping you around because it's benefiting them at the moment,
Right.
and so they can just move on to the next.
Very interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm probably going to have to sneak off a stage here in just a couple
All
minutes,
right,
but that
Deanna.
answers a lot of questions. And I tend to be a fixer. I'm not anymore because that was
Right.
something I had to become very aware of, but that
Yeah.
was definitely part of the pattern for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's
all right.
it's
Cool.
rough, man. It's rough.
Yeah, it is. Thanks
But
for the
Deanna,
insight,
thank you.
though.
Hey, thank you for jumping up here.
No problem.
And
Thanks.
all right, cheers. Keisha, welcome to the stage, love. I'd like to pass you the mic.
Hey, thank you. So I wanted to ask, and I think you kind of touched on this a little bit with answering Deanna's question, but when we think of psychopath, we always think of someone that's dangerous. So can a psychopath be someone who is not hurting anyone physically or doing anything like violently, but still be considered a psychopath?
Well, you have to look at it this way, okay? When we take in like a primary psychopath, I mean, emotional abuse is still abuse, all right?
Yeah.
Manipulation, control, those are still forms of abuse. So, I mean, a primary psychopath is they're hurting somebody somewhere somehow, because that's their nature. They don't really care about they don't care about other people. They don't have the same moral compass that most people have. They don't have empathy. They don't have care. So to look at it that way, I mean, can somebody be a non-violent psychopath? Well, it depends how you categorize violent. Is is
Yeah.
emotional abuse a violent act? Well, is it
Yeah.
violent? Some people will debate that. But is it abuse? Yeah. Is it detrimental? Can it create trauma? Yeah. So that's you know that's still an unhealthy premise. Now, people that have secondary, well, there's that line. That's a debatable line. In psychology, it's a very debatable place, because somebody that's secondary, sometimes they can turn around and really show they seem like that they're getting it. They seem like they see what's happening. But, but still, are they interacting in a way with other people that is abusive in any manner, be it emotional or physical or whatever? Are they still operating in that kind of place? And if they are, then that kind of answers your question. I mean, because it's rare that somebody that's considered a psychopath or even has a diagnosis of primary or secondary, that they are not engaging at that moment in their life of abusing somebody, be it by
Right.
control or manipulation or whatever. They're abusing somebody.
That definitely puts it into perspective because, again, sometimes we automatically go to the most extreme place with certain titles and overlook something like you said, like, mental abuse and emotional abuse and things like that. So
Right. Like,
thank you for
I
that.
did. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, I did my show yesterday on emotional vampires are real. And it's about bringing that awareness around to the fact that, we sometimes miss that part. We miss the part of really what kind of impact is this person having. And the other gambit here is that a lot of people mistake a true psychopath for somebody that's merely a narcissist or a narcissist. There is a little bit of a difference, because a psychopath takes a narcissist kind of to the next level. A psychopath is a Cadillac version of a narcissistic sociopath, if you were to look at it that way. Okay,
Wow.
so it's a hard place. It's definitely a hard place to be in.
So much to protect yourself from. Thank you.
Right, yeah, absolutely. I love to. I'm going to share really quick. Deanna just piped this in on the back channel here, and clinically, emotionally, and mental abuse is considered violent. The trauma impact is still there, and that is very, very accurate words.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Keisha, thank you for coming up. Deanna, thank you for coming up. Anybody else want to jump up here and share your 2 cents? Now is your opportunity. But yeah, it's such a place that sometimes it is hard for people that have been in this or even are in this to address that they are. And then understanding that, well, I'm not being hit. I'm not being impacted physically. Therefore, it's not as bad. Let me tell you something. Emotional abuse can be just as bad as physical abuse. Emotional abuse can sometimes be even more traumatic for some people than physical abuse. And that's a hard place for some people to click around. But when you're emotionally broken, and I mean emotionally, just really broken down, demeaned, devalued, degraded, that creates a harm and a place inside of your psyche, of yourself, your self-care, your self-awareness that can truly not just impact your future relationships, but impact you today of how you operate and how you take care of yourself. And that's the damaging part, is that people miss that sometimes. They miss that place of like, what am I doing now to ensure that I don't stay in this situation and that I don't go and do it again? And let me tell you something, the lost puppy dog syndrome that we were talking about will never work when you're dealing with a psychopath. It'll never work. It won't work with a narcissistic sociopath. It won't work. You're not going to make them change. You're not going to get them to see the error of their ways. It does not exist. It is not a mental process that can actually happen in their mindset because it's not there. So anything that they give, a lot of times it's made up, it's orchestrated, because they're going to operate sometimes and pretend to do what society is expecting them to do. And that's the hard place. Well, guys, I hope that you've taken something good from this topic. I know it's a little bit heavier of a topic. And next week, I'm just telling you now, next week is going to be a lot of heavy topics. I am going to be going back down the road of talking about a devastating force, which is dealing with narcissistic abuse, and what do you do after the fact. So that's what next week is going to be focused about. I also want to invite you guys on March 16th, which is a Wednesday before St. Patrick's. I'm going to be doing a special show talking about the history of St. Patrick's Day. So I hope that you'll join me for that. It'll be really good. Please, if you like this show, give me a follow. My website also is PsychCandy.org. Please give that a visit. And I'm going to be gearing up soon for the PsychCandy Empowerment Boot Camps. And that's going to be done virtually, offered virtually, and it's also going to be held live in a couple of cities throughout the United States. So definitely hit the website for more information on that. Guys, I thank you for being here. Keisha, Deanna, thank you so much for coming up and sharing some energy and sharing your thoughts. And until next time, wishing everybody a very blessed and happy rest of your Thursday, rest of your week, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.